we're going to be looking at the cooling system of my Fairlane. This is a 1968 model Fairlane. I'm going to be looking specifically at this. This is the original factory cooling fan, but since I've got a Holley EFI system here, one of the cool things about the Holley EFI system is that it can control external devices, including Thermo fans. So today I'm going to look at converting this original with a Thermo fan. I'll start by loosening off the alternator so there's no tension on that water pump drive belt. There we are. It's the original fan. It's just made out of pressed sheet metal, solid riveted together. Very basic design, very 1960s Ford. Now that the cooling fan's out, you can see there's not a hell of a lot of different distance between the front of the water pump pulley and the rear of the radiator. For this reason, I had to purchase a low profile Thermo fan, which is a height of only 52 millimeters. The next thing I'll be doing is bolting down the water pump pulley back to the water pump. Okay, now tightening back the alternator belt. Alright, I've got the relay here. So I'm just going to go ahead and dummy this all up now. This is the breakout plug for the Holley system to power other things. I think it can power, an instrument gauge, and all I'm going to be running off it is the Thermo fans right now. So it turns out the light blue wire here is the fan control wire. What I'm going to do here is remove the unnecessary wires for now. I can always patch back into these later, but I believe it should be just a case of removing the clamp, just inserting a small screwdriver here to push the barb down whilst holding a little tension on the wire itself. So we're left just with the plug, just like that. That can just plug right into there. There's a convenient mounting point which will double well as a earth point as well, just down here on the voltage regulator. So I'll mount up the relay like so. And it's going to be a nice short wire down to the Thermo fan. So I know in theory now that the system is working, the relay is wired correctly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to install all of the wires, install the Thermo fan mechanically, and then I will actually run the engine and see if it works with the engine running. Interesting, the mounting system here. In the documentation it just says to push those long bolts through the radiator fins. I've been very careful not to actually damage the cores. So I've connected everything up and tested the system. Not working. The fans are not being triggered because of the way I've wired the system. So I've wired the system as if it's a 12-volt trigger. What's actually happening is the Holley is configured to trigger via ground. So I'll need to rewire the relay so that it is provided a constant 12 volts or a switch 12 volts from the ignition source and goes to ground and completes the circuit to actually trigger the relay. So a little bit more work ahead of me. Alright, that's it. So the way it's wired now, we have a 12 volt switched wire going to the relay, and then the ground wire from the relay switch pin goes back to the Holley ECU, which triggers ground to turn the fan on. So I'm about to test this now. Alright, so as you can see now, the fan is actually running non-stop with the ignition on. This is not what we targeted. We want the fan to switch on at a certain temperature. So let's have a look at the Holley 3.5-inch touchscreen and see what the settings are in there. Okay, so that should have switched the fan off. If I go back to the monitor here, for some reason it's still saying fan 1, it wants it on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually swap the pin to the fan 2 pin and see what happens then. Alright, so now all that's really left to do is to test this. So on the hand controller, I'm going to set the fan 1 on temperature to the same as the fan 2, and I'm going to set the fan on temperature at 190, just as I did before, and off at 180. Fan 2 on at 190 as well. Okay, so I'll save that, and now I'm going to get the heat gun out and test this this circuit again. If anybody knows why fan 1 was always staying on, even though I've got the temperatures set in the hand controller here, then please let me know. Otherwise what I've done is I've just moved the pin from fan 1 controller to fan 2. Since there's only one fan in this case, that doesn't really matter, but it's not the ideal outcome. So what I'm going to do is get the old heat gun out again and test this system. Alright, so all that's really left to do now is take the car for a test drive and see how this actually works on the road. So I'll let the engine get up to temperature and away we go. Here's what I love about the Holley system is, compared to the old setup that I had, and I might do an article on this in the future, is the fact that you can turn the key. I've got a cold engine. Alright, I'm sitting here in the car park now. You can see the temperature of the engine's got up to operating temperature. Been for a nice drive around the block, and now I'm just going to sit here and let the engine get hot with no airflow and see how this thermo fan system works. As far as drivability goes, I feel like I could notice a little bit more torque. It's really hard to know these things just when you're going by the seat of your pants. I mean, the only way to really tell if there is a power difference is to use some sort of benchmark figure like a quarter mile time or a dyno readout. I'm not going to do either of those. I'm just going to live with the fact that what I've got is what I've got. When you've got a 6-cylinder engine in a car this size and only 200 horsepower, every little bit counts. I felt like this has made a difference. Certainly not going to turn this car into a fast car at all, but I definitely like the quieter engine that comes without having that stainless steel pressed fan turning the whole time. The temperature's slowly rising up. It's a pretty warm day today, around about 30 degrees C, so I'm expecting it should kick in any moment. So my temperature gauge seems to have come up fairly rapidly and stabilised. I can't actually hear if a fan's running at all, so I might just get out and have a little look and see. Okay, turbo fan is running. It's nice and quiet. Certainly the temperature has stabilised at wherever it is. The fan's not cycling on and off as far as I can tell, but it's really hard to know because I couldn't hear it from inside the car. I don't know whether it's switched on or off. But taking a look at the gauge once again, you can see before I got out of the car the temperature was up a little, so it's come down a little now. So certainly the cooling fan is taking more heat out of the radiator than the engine is putting into it, which is the right thing to have happen. So overall, I think this is a success. What'll be really the test is to see how this goes on a 40-degree day. Not sure if we're going to get any more 40-degree days this year, but if I get one, I might take this out and test and see how it goes.